This is one of the first games that actually destroyed me emotionally. Welcome back to another review play of an old school game that lives among my favourites collection. But this game comes with the age-old mystery on how the bloody hell do you pronounce the title of this game? Well, it's the classic potato-potato debate, where some people say Suikoden or Suikoden, or maybe even Suikoden, but I'll probably go with Suikoden. Now, before I begin, I've made this little spoiler tag because I don't think I'll be able to fully explain why this game affected me the way it did without dropping some spoilers, and I'll be incorporating this in my future videos as well. Don't worry, there will be a little countdown so you can skip ahead to when this tag is not on screen anymore. With that in mind, let's have a look at this game together. This role-playing game series began in 1995 and was developed and published by Konami for the PlayStation 1, and continued to develop the series through to its last English release in 2008 for the Nintendo DS, and the last Japan release in 2012 for the PlayStation Portable. What the hell is this artwork though? Suikoden was regarded as an exceptionally popular RPG among other titles like Final Fantasy VII and Wild Arms, later trumped by its successor, Suikoden II. The real clincher for me of this whole series was the solid storytelling and the large cast of recruitable characters in the game that you could rally for your cause. This game series draws inspiration from a classic 14th century Chinese novel called Soiwu Jin, or Water Margin. I'm so sorry if I butchered the pronunciation of that. The novel is based around the fictionalization of a historical figure, Song Jiang, who led a group of outlaws during the Song dynasty in 12th century China. The story journeys through how 108 outlaws are unified together from various backgrounds and professions to fight against the corrupt government, which has vilified or framed them for crimes they didn't commit. These outlaws form 36 heavenly spirits and 72 earthly spirits, also known as the 108 Stars of Destiny, which have been sent to counteract 108 demons that were released from a sealed hall by a troublesome monk. In order to be granted amnesty, they fight against the Imperial Army in order to try and gain the Emperor's favour and establish peace. Suikoden almost plays out in a similar fashion, where you as the main character are the son of an Imperial general who is drafted into the Imperial Army alongside his retainers while his father engages in combat up north. After some flirty introductions and completing a couple of errands for the Imperials, the true colours of the Empire begins to show with the oppression of outlying villages and the treatment of its people outside of Imperial fortifications, which opens the party's eyes to the corruption which is taking place. But among your comrades fights the mysterious Ranger Ted, who is also your best friend, and he is privately summoned to the castle after displaying an otherworldly power in a battle you face against the Ant Queen of Mount Seifu. However, when he returns to the household, you find he has inflicted a wound only caused by a magical attack. He tells you a secret that he is the bearer of the Soul Eater, or the Rune of Life and Death, which is one of the 27 true runes which exist in this world. The court magician has been hunting down the rune since Ted's grandfather had passed it on to him almost 300 years ago. Suikoden 4 details more of Ted's story and how he came to bear the Soul Eater, but for now I won't focus on that side of the lore and I'll just look at this game for now. Ted passes on the Soul Eater to you while knowing that the Imperial Army will kill or capture him for it, and thus the rune begins to alter the fate of those around you, as its title of the Cursed Rune seeks to feed on the souls involved with your character. And so, with a brand of traitor among you and your retainers' heads, you manage to catch a lucky streak and assisted out of the town by a mercenary named Victor. As certain events unfold, while you are on the run from the Imperial Army, you find yourself being roped into a rebel alliance known as the Liberation Army, who seeks to liberate the nation from the corruption of the Imperial Army and begin to take up arms against the Empire to release the country of their tyranny. One by one, the Liberation Army fight to reclaim regions and muster others to their cause to be able to take on the Imperial capital and her armies. Those who join the cause come from various backgrounds and are destined to be united by the hero for the common cause of peace, which is also known as the fated 108 Stars of Destiny. The story of this game I feel was really well told, and it was enough for you to overlook some of the flaws in the game, which I will get to in a moment. There was enough pacing in the story for you to be engaged the entire way through and also become attached to the main cast of characters of your entourage. The story, however, it's very linear in the sense that even though it gives you options to be able to select different responses, you can't deviate away from where the story is supposed to go. So, if you didn't want to drink tea from a suspicious man, well, that's too bad, sweetheart, because you're going to drink it and get poisoned. But the real highlight of the story as a whole was seeing the effect of the cursed rune in action, which I will talk about now, so skip ahead to where there is no spoiler tag if you somehow plan on playing this old game and don't want the story to be spoiled for you. The Soul Eater is known to bend the fate around you by putting events in motions to claim souls from the people closest to you, and this is where the story became heartbreaking at various points. The first major mission for the Liberation Army was to deliver the Fire Spear blueprints to an informant of the Army's secret factory. It's where the story really focused on the Army's leader, Odessa Silverberg. Upon returning to their hideout, they find the Imperial Army has ransacked the place, and Odessa hurries down to see what's happened, only for the party to find that she has sacrificed herself to protect a child. She is the first soul claimed by the Soul Eater, and the conversation which takes place forces you to either accept her wish to dump her body in the river, or if you resist enough times, Victor steps in and does the job. That section of the story was tailored towards building a closer connection with her, which meant that her death came as a shock as the time spent with her was quite short. The most heartbreaking one, however, was the death of your retainer Gremio. After rescuing an old pharmacist from an Imperial prison, Millage Oppenheimer, one of the Imperial generals, throws a vial of man-eating spores on the ground and traps the entourage in the room. However, they could be protected by being locked away in a sealed corridor with a lever on the other side. Gremio sacrifices himself by closing the door while the spores begin to devour his body. The heart-wrenching conversation of his final moments, with nothing but adoration for the hero, was one of the most difficult scenes of the entire game for me at least. And then upon being rescued, all that remained was his signature cape and axe. You can imagine as a kid, that destroyed me. But this also fed into the completionist in me because if you manage to unite all 108 stars of destiny, there's an opportunity to get Gremio back. As moving as it was though, there was a part of me that wanted the character to at least give him a hug or something, because a moment like that would have been reflective of Odessa's moment of weakness as a leader. Now, I don't want to spoil the rest of the game, and so the spoilers will end here. But if there are some of you who have played the game and are considering replaying it, there were events and characters that I could vaguely remember which came across as a nice surprise for me when I played it. Hunting for all the characters to enlist in your army was a nice side quest to the game, as some people had special criteria in order to recruit them, whether it was physically looking for them in the world or waiting until you or another character reached a certain level in order to consider your request. One of the minor letdowns was the fact that because they had to create 108 unique recruitable characters in the game, the character development aside from a few of the main cast felt very shallow. For me, I'm the kind of person who enjoys a bit of backstory or just getting to know a character a little more than the regurgitated one-liners that they have when they've been recruited to the castle. It would have been a nice touch if the characters could have responded to the way the world was moving around them, and even the occasional comment on recent events would have made them less two-dimensional than they already were. Excuse the pun. In addition to this, there were many recruitable characters who would be combat ready in your entourage, and this made me question whether or not a large manifest of selectable characters was worth including for combat, or if it would have been more preferable to have a handful who were suited for combat and left the other more generic characters to have another service that they could provide. Understandably, it would have been incredibly difficult to write all 108 stories and have different tasks for each one, so I'm not dismissing the point entirely. But with everything that was going on in the castle anyway, there was a lot of things that you could do, such as deliver collectibles, visit the different shops, and manage your items in the vault. This made getting the characters for your castle interesting, just to see what service they would provide, if any. For some unusual reason though, they gave 2 characters unique runes to be able to customize your menu appearance and sounds. God knows why they thought that was a good idea. The character lazily named Window requires a unique rune and for you to gather collectibles to create beautiful stained glass windows. And I thought it would be dope having some actual stained glass art for the castle, but nope, how horribly wrong I was. Turns out it was just to customize the look of your menus, which seemed to be a wasted endeavor. And really, I picked one for the sake of actually saying I used that function, otherwise I wouldn't have bothered. So, while I can imagine the difficulty of having different tasks for each person, and it's easier to include them into the combat manifest, for me, there's a certain point where I'm wondering whether 108 plus all the other unrecruitable characters was extremely ambitious to attempt to develop story for, and whether or not they rectified this in the later series of the game. As far as the entire gameplay is concerned, aside from the typical encounters you face in the overworld, the game also integrated a war system and a 1v1 duel for certain scenarios of the game. While it's not overly complex and based off a paper scissors rock mechanic, there was still the thrill of trying to outwit your opponent as to what move would be conducted next. In primary school, I remember being inspired by the 1v1 duel that I incorporated it into a game my friends and I used to play at lunchtime. Yeah, I was the popular kid. Difficulty-wise, if you're a first-time player of RPG games, then not knowing how to best manage your inventory and keep your party well-armed and well-armoured can potentially make this game more difficult for you. As a kid, I know that I had very little focus on this stuff, making particular boss fights more challenging than it should have been. Luckily enough, the game doesn't force you to grind too much, as even a lower level character that joins you can be leveled up super quickly to match your party, given there is someone on your team that can defeat all the enemies. But if you have played a lot of turn-based RPGs before, then this system will feel incredibly familiar to you. One exploit that I did farm, however, to be able to get rich real quick was the minigame that involved 3 dice that spin around in a bowl. Majority of the time you can get super lucky and max out your cash to be able to upgrade your weapons and armor quite comfortably. I'm sure in hindsight, if the developers knew how easy this game was, it would have been nerfed completely. The graphics had a blend of the 2D fixed perspective overworld and a hybrid of 2D and 3D in the battle sequences. The art for the scenery and the architecture were nice and consistent. Even the more outlying villages where the dwarves and kobolds lived had their own style, which was a nice distinction between races. Perhaps it was my emulator that was cracking some of the textures, so I can't say accurately if this occurred in the main game, but it would be a shame if that was part of the release. While this next criticism isn't a control issue, but more a menu functionality issue, the handling of the inventory, the vault, and equipment was awfully clunky. Having separate menus to equip items was a little bit tedious, and at least now in more modern RPGs, you can equip all your items in the one screen without having to change over. This soundtrack really suits the atmosphere of the game, and I find that none of the tracks were out of place. Not only that, but it was appropriately emotive for the action or scene that was taking place, especially in those scenes where a character would be sharing a personal moment with you, and the soft guitar in the background created that intimacy that was needed for the scene. One thing I have to mention is how much I enjoyed the bass line in the track Beautiful Golden City, which gets played in Gregminster. It's not often that I hear a bass line with a bit of flair, especially a 5-string rock bass in a medieval track. As a whole, this is a very accommodating game for first-time players, and a good narrative for those who are well versed in the genre. The story is engaging, and for anyone who hasn't played the Suikoden series, or even RPGs for that matter, should definitely give it a try, especially if you're into those story-based games. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. I've been enjoying going through my old school collection of games, so be sure to keep posted as there are many more I want to play and review all these years later. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more coming up soon. Let me know your thoughts on this review or the game itself, because I'm sure there are some of us that played favourites with certain characters. Amelia. So yeah, let's have some good chats, guys, and this is Chris Bow signing out.